What's going on, guys? Still here. So today is the long overdue part 3 of the CDK tutorial for making missions, and ran into a bit of an issue. So yesterday I actually recorded the tutorial and I built all of this that you see in front of you, and it turns out that I had gotten pretty much everything wrong. I did some stuff wrong in the menus, but I got it all to work now. So I'm just going to run through it with you instead of building it again from scratch. And it was also 35 minutes, and I felt like it was maybe a bit too long and really not as informative as I would have liked it to be. It was getting pretty late, so I kind of got carried away with myself. But yeah, so today I'm going to show you how to make a helipad work as a spawn, make tank spawns, make bombing points, and I believe one more thing. Yeah, no, just tank spawns, bombing points, and helipads, and just some other minute things. So, first thing that you want to do when you want to make a helipad spawn is, and this also, again, this will apply to airfields, as I said in the previous episode, this airfield that we made was an airfield meant for spawns on in-level airfield. So this is like physically modeled onto Afghanistan, like the level itself, and you just make spawns so where the where the runway ends, where it starts, all the little spawns for aircraft, etc. But this is how to basically apply the spawns to actual units, if you will, or actual assets. This works for aircraft carriers, helipads, and placeable airfields. So here we have a helipad. I had named it Bagram Helipad. And what we have to do to set this up as a spawn point is very similar to the on map one, just without all of the entry points, or sorry, the starting and end point and the spawn actual little areas where the aircraft will spawn on. So we're going to go over here to our properties. We're going to show the trigger mission objective infos, and I put it here on the same trigger as the airbase itself. If you want to, what I like to do is I like to separate air spawns, ground spawns, and helicopter spawns and ship spawns in different triggers. So the one below it, Team A FOB spawns, is for the tanks, and Team A Bagram spawns are for everything at Bagram Air Base. So we have Bagram Air Base over here. You can just kind of tell by, well, the order that I made them in and what I made the location name as. So we have Bagram Air Base, here we have Bagram Helipad. So everything that you want on is as follows. So you go and you click action, you make mission mark as respawn point, which will then put this little action here. You set the target as the helipad, which is just an object. So the same as like naming the ID of a tank or a plane or something. You just go and you make it the name of whatever you want it to be, basically Bagram Helipad. So when you hit target, you'll see in the units and areas, you'll see Bagram Helipad. You click on it and then you click OK. So now, basically, the game knows that you want to utilize this this helipad asset. LOC underscore name, so location name, basically is what you're going to see when you select your spawn. So if you're in a helicopter, although I didn't change it specifically with this because this is a different thing entirely, I didn't prevent helicopters from spawning here. You'll see Bagram Airbase and then Bagram Helipad. Basically, if you were to spawn a helicopter at the airbase spawn, it would spawn you in the back. However, if you select Bagram Helipad in the spawn menu in-game, you'll spawn on the helicopter pad. Make sure it is ticked to an airfield, so is airfield. The team, of course, is A team, because this is the A side of the mission, if you will. This is just a test mission. It's going to be all over the place, but I will try to live stream me making a proper mission at some point. I don't know when that'll be, but I definitely want to get some of the some more basics down, maybe another episode or two, and then I'll do a live stream. So again, team is set to A. Where is it? Modular airfield is something that only, as far as I know, works on airfield assets. I don't believe the helipad base actually has hangars and stuff. Like, I don't think it actually counts. This is stuff that sim players will know. For air bases, there's hangars, there's the runway, there's the tents, and the fuel. Basically, if you bomb and destroy them, it adds penalties to your spawn time, or your repair time, your spawn time, stuff like that. So here, at the tags, this is the most important part. You don't want aircraft to spawn. So you do want air ticked, because helicopters are considered an air asset. But in order for aircraft to not spawn, you have to untick all of these. None can spawn, just don't touch that one. Tanks, I believe by default, they won't even spawn. It won't even matter. But for aircraft, they're all considered air assets. And ground, the game kind of recognizes them as separately, so you don't need to actually uncheck any of these. Even though, by default, tanks are unchecked. Which is actually probably the reason that it's like that. But for now, yeah, just don't even worry about that. But again, make sure that these are all ticked off, but you leave air on. Helicopter, type attack helicopter, and utility helicopter are all the ones that you want ticked. Now, it's very simple for the helipad spawn. I'm going to do this with a airbase spawn for Team B, so I'm going to show you how it works for an airbase. So this is a nice little flat area-ish. We're going to go to select object groups. I'm going to hit create unit. Going to plop down an object group, which will take a minute. This might actually lag the CDK for a moment. And we're going to scroll over here. Actually, let me get rid of the triggers and stuff so you can see. Going to scroll down, so you've got things like capture zone, buoys, and stuff like that. Basically, I haven't really used those. Hedgehogs, which I'll zoom in on them. Oops. Come on. Here's your hedgehog. Or 5 of them, which is what I used in my tank biathlon mission that I made. And we've got plenty of other things like buildings. We got some rock assets from one of the Arcade maps, I believe. Yeah, just a big rock, like a Halo Forge rock almost. Destroy T-34s, stuff like that. So yeah, this is where you'll find a lot of decorations, including trenches, which when you make a ground map and you want to add some custom trenching, that's where you go to. But down here we have DYN-AF, so Dynamic Airfield. You might recognize this one from if you've played Arcade, or you remember way back in the day if you haven't played Arcade. This was like a runway on, what was it called? Desert Cliffs or something? So yeah, this is a huge runway. And another thing to note, you see some of the objects are on the ground, some of them are not. Basically, this darker ground texture means that that's where the terrain is going to raise up to basically flatten out the runway. If you have it completely under, it should form with the terrain, or it might actually kind of level itself out, but you just want to be careful. Basically, if you have the runway like this, the game will probably just flatten this out, but this terrain is going to actually be unflattened. It's going to remain this way it is, and it's going to be like right here in the middle. You're going to have like a, what is that, like 2 or 3 degree slope weird thing. So when you place down big airfields, just keep in mind that the ground is not entirely flat. However, you don't want it to be up too high so it looks really stupid. Just a raised plot of land in the middle of the map. It looks really dumb. But we're going to plop down, not that one. Let's go, oops. You might recognize this one. This is the North Korean airfield from Korea. So we're going to place this one down. And again, basically just for the sake of tutorial, I would place this much farther back, obviously, but we're just going to leave it here. One thing to note is that the airfields, I actually totally forget some of the airfields spawn direction, so you pretty much just gotta figure it out. I think it's actually, oh yeah, it is actually correct. So where this red line, whoops, come on, where this one is, not the red line with the arrow, the one that has no arrow on the end, that basically points you in the direction of the asset's direction. So theoretically, you should spawn here and then take off this way. But we're going to flip it around. Like so. Okay. It's going to look really goofy. I pretty much just like to raise the airfield like that. But of course, again, it's going to look very, very stupid. So you just play around. Just level it out. Frigate. Well, did I just say frigate? Yeah, I did. We'll just leave it like that. We'll see what happens. It's going to be funny. Yeah. So I'm going to name this Team B. I forgot. AF. Game automatically tries to number code everything. So Team B is basically all of the unit slots. So that's why I did that. Team B airfield. We're going to open up our triggers and objective properties. We're going to go to actually, you know what? We'll do this. Make another trigger. We're going to scroll it up. This will be Team B Airbase. Spawn. Action mission mark as respawn point. Going to select. Pretty much the rule of thumb is when you make a new asset, most of the time it's usually all the way at the bottom of the list. However, this isn't. I think it depends on whether it's an asset or if it's a zone, stuff like that. We're going to make this Team B Airbase. Check mark is airfield. Team Bravo. For this one, we're going to select modular airfield so you know what I'm talking about. However, when you just select this applies basically nothing. The game relies on more triggers being placed down for the destruction of the modular parts of the airfield to actually do something, as far as I know. I don't think bombing the runway out is actually going to prevent you from taking off, because you have to tie certain things to it, as far as I know. We're going to make air, everything spawn, even, well, hydroplanes. We're going to also, actually, let me mention this. Carrier takeoff basically means Navy plane. So if a plane is labeled a Navy fighter or a Navy bomber in the game, they will not be able to spawn at a point if this is not selected. This is just how they worded it. They could have just said naval or naval aircraft or something, but basically carrier takeoff is how they do that. We're going to untick helicopters so they don't spawn for the B team, but AI aren't going to spawn. And we should be good. This should be everything. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to do that for the background spawn to make sure that the helicopters... Okay, no, they already were like that. Okay. Let's see. So this helipad spawn should be strictly only helicopters, no fighters and stuff like that. Because obviously you don't want one team spawning in jets going, you know, or whatever aircraft going into an air spawn going, you know, like their max speed. You want them to spawn in the airfield, stuff like that. This also applies for carriers. Now, this isn't a map for carriers, of course, but if you want to make a carrier spawn, you do the same thing. You go, but you go to ships this time. So you add the ship, you scroll down, you find your carriers. Like here are all the Japanese World War II carriers. We've got, where are they? Look for a modern one. They have a new kind of naming. Aircraft carrier Forstall. There's the Forstall. Basically, you do the same thing to spawn as you do for the helipad and the airbase, except obviously if you only want naval aircraft and helicopters to spawn in it, that's all you tick. You don't tick, you know, normal AA fighter, bomber, stuff like that. That's how that works. You just spawn in the unit, and then you basically tell the game what you want to be the spawn, and that's how it works. Now, we're going to go into spawn points for tanks and capture zones. So, and bombing points. What you want to use is you want to use your spheres and your cylinders. I've never really used box zone. That's more for like boundaries, but I haven't used that too much. Here I plopped in a FOB, which is basically just a military base asset, and then 2 tank spawns. So FOB spawn A, FOB spawn B. We go to Team A FOB spawns in the trigger menu. We have mission mark as respawn point for both FOB A and FOB B. Basically, if they were both targets under one action, that would mean that both of these spawns would be under the same selection in the menu. So in order to actually be able to select 2 spawns, this is what it has to look like. You can just make one copy and paste it, and then change the target of the second one and the location name. So we have FOB spawn A. We have the location name. You don't need to check as airfield because it's just an area spawn. But do make sure that they're actually spheres. They seem to work the best for tanks. You don't even need to take air spawns because they're on the ground, so the game kind of detects that. It won't spawn you in the air. You just want to select all the tanks. You don't even need to select the helicopters either. They won't spawn there because, again, the game recognizes helicopters and aircraft as the same thing in terms of some of this automated stuff where it does that. Here we have the capture zone, which is in between both Team A spawn, Team B spawn. Team B also has some AI T-90s, which protect the spawn, which aren't really hard to defeat if you're in a helicopter with Hellfires and you're decent enough away, but I digress. Here we have a cylinder, which is, I've been told, the best for making capture points. So you just kind of click cylinder, you drag it, and it's a little wonky, but yeah, you get the idea. So you make a big cylinder. Rule of thumb: if you want this cap zone to work properly, you want to make sure that a decent amount of it goes under the ground in order to actually do that. Because if the cap zone is like this, whoa, I have snapping turned on, that's why. Tanks aren't going to camp because obviously it's not on the ground. So just pull it down a little bit, and there you go. Now, I made a trigger for this. It's labeled Conquest, as this is basically just one capture point. So this is very important. You want the target to be the cap. You want the army to be set to neutral, as no one can basically own it at the start. If it was selected Army 1, Team A would own it. If it was selected Army 2, Team B would own it, which is how you set it up for battle mode. Can capture on ground, and can capture by GM is how tanks are able to capture it. Capture on ground is more for aircraft, GM is for tanks, but I always have them both selected. It seems to work the best. You probably don't need on ground, but I think GM is how it works. Capture in air would obviously be for like an air domination and such. Now, this is where it gets kind of confusing. So we have 5 different zone types. You have capture, domination, capture one time, capture hold, and supremacy. Stay with me here because this might get a little confusing sometimes. Capture is airfield air capture, airfield domination, like capturing a zone in the air. However, sometimes, weirdly enough, this works as a ground capture if you have capture by GM on, but it doesn't work. But sometimes it does. It's weird, and it depends on how you set things up in the trigger menu. It's really weird. Domination is airfield domination and tank domination. But all you need to do is have capture on ground, capture in air, or capture by GM. So it's weird. So domination applies to both ground and air. Normal capture applies to air and sometimes ground. It's weird. Capture one time is battle mode. So you capture the base. It is held. You can no longer decap. Or actually also like break mode. Break used to be like this. And the capture zone either ends the game by bleeding all the tickets, or it disappears like in break and it continues a new capture point. But you have to set up that once a capture point is captured, it then creates another one, and then another one, and then another one until the game ends, until you capture the final one. Again, depending on how you set up your triggers, how you set up your game mode. Capture hold is conquest. So you capture it, you hold the point, which is what you're supposed to do in conquest, and then the tickets bleed. Supremacy is the mode in naval. So the naval supremacy mode is whoever has the more people in the capture zone captures the captures the point, or the tickets just bleed normally. Here it says supremacy, capture like in domination but without tickets, bleeding, and with capture end event. Which doesn't make any sense, because that's not how supremacy literally functions. From what I've experimented with it, that's not how it functions. Capture hold is how that works. So this is conquest. So people capture the point, you hold it, the other team can capture it, and it leads tickets the other way. Supremacy, you could do a conquest with the supremacy thing, which would basically mean whoever's in the cap the most, which I've actually tried by having like a 5-kilometer area, if you will, and the most people at the, capture and whatever. But that's not really something commonplace. So it's very confusing. I still could be wrong on this. If one of you figures it out differently, tell me in the comments, because this is really confusing. It's kind of vague and doesn't make sense sometimes. So we have also used HUD markers, which is just basically shows you that the enemy team, it's the little A, B, C, or attack the D point at the top, that it basically shows you who owns it. Time multiplier is multiplier times 20, which equals the capture time for one player. So you set this value to 3, theoretically, to make it 1 minute for one player to capture. However, again, if you do it wrong, like I have in the past, they don't capture it at all. It only half captures the point, and then it stops. It's really weird. Again, if you figure this out, please let me know. Also, Weeby, if you're listening and you watch this, please correct this for me, because I know I am most likely wrong on this. If you know how all of this works, please make a comment and I will pin it. Because I am still confused as heck. So, yeah, it's pretty annoying. Airfield, you can basically make it that a airfield is the capture point itself, as far as I know. Create respawn base, which means if you capture the airfield, you can then respawn from it, which is the thing you tick. Respawn base. This is how you make respawn base for tanks. So if I wanted to make this conquest cap in, say, like a break mode, a new spawn point, which I believe was how break actually worked, but I don't think so. I think there was just still the normal caps, or at least caps moved up with the point. This is how you would do it. You basically just say that when you capture the point, that would become a new cap for team whatever. And you would name it and such and such. Show border on map basically means that it's going to show you the border on the minimap of the cap circle. You know this if you play naval, and you see on supremacy mode there's just a big circle on the minimap. Let's see. And then of course the tags are for what spawns, if you set it up to spawn. And then you have the capture tags. So for here we have it set that tanks can capture. Did not set helicopters or aircraft. So theoretically they shouldn't be able to capture this. So capture tags is the tags of what can actually cap the point. Normal tags is if you make it a spawn point afterwards, that's what spawns. So we've gone through how to make a helipad and a placeable airfield a point, and also an aircraft carrier. We've shown how to make a tank spawn point and a cap. Last thing is a bombing point. So, bombing points. I personally prefer to make them spheres by just putting the horizontal intersection of it slightly under the ground. As you can see, there's a little bit of... This is the main ground of the map. This is the raised ground, or at least it's supposed to be. No, sorry. This is the normal ground. This is the ground of the asset. Whoops, had that backwards. This is how I do it. Basically, if a bomb lands within the circumference, that is, if I can visualize this better. Come on. If a bomb lands within the circumference of this point, it's going to do damage. Fairly simple. Basically, where you see the target, make it slightly bigger than the target. If I wanted to be an asshole, I could basically say that this is what you have to bomb. So you'd have to be very precise, but I'm not going to do that. So, how do you set it up as a bombing point? And how do you make it that tickets bleed when you bomb the point? Well, I'm going to go back to here. Bombing points owned by Team B, and when point destroyed, a mission objective that Team A will see, which is to destroy a bombing point, or whatever you want to name it. So, we have bombing points owned by Team B. Action is mission set bombing area. The target is the bombing point, which is the name of the little sphere area. The army that it belongs to is Army 2. The health point, or the health points of the base is 25,000. I don't know what exactly the unit is, but I thought it was maybe like 2.5 tons, I believe, is like how it works, so like 25,000 pounds or whatever. I don't know, but I believe if you go to 50,000, it actually breaks, and it just basically one-taps the base with like even like a 50 kilogram bomb. So 25,000 or 30,000, I believe, is actually the limit. Use army variable, I have never touched that. HP fire multiplier is basically how much is the base going to take its health away after you bomb it, which is why a lot of people in RRB complained, and in Sim, that you would bomb a base and it would be right before it was destroyed, and you would have to fly all the way back to base and come back and bomb it, and say waste like a big 1,000 pound bomb to get like 0.02 tons. So it's kind of stupid. So they basically made it that when you bomb a base and it's at a certain health point percentage, it'll start to burn slowly. That's how that works. Airfield, I believe that just marks it that it is also an airfield. So if you destroy the bombing point, you can no longer spawn. I believe is how that works. I don't know. I've never tried it. Armor class, I've never used variable. I've never used variables at all in my missions. I know that Varric has, looking at his missions. I think Weeby has, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked at one of his missions. If ever, I can't recall. I have not touched variables. That is something that I don't know and probably will not get into for the foreseeable future, so I won't be getting into that at all. Conditions for when the bombing point is destroyed. This is how you set it up so that basically you update an objective and you also bleed tickets. There's two ways to do it. There's one way to do it without an objective, which basically is just to say that it takes game score away, which is actually in this one, but of course you want to know that, hey, your team bombed a point, it was successful, or it failed, say if the timer ran out, and you can apply point loss or gain as such. So, condition is when the bombing area is destroyed. So mission is bombing area destroyed. The target is the bombing point. Action is MO, set objective status. The target is, of course, again, it is the mission objective itself, which is destroy point. Which basically you just kind of make the objective and then you go back to the trigger and then you make this part. That's kind of how it works in order-ish. Status 2. So if I remember, and again I will be linking the CDK trigger reference sheet, or key if you will, that is part of the CDK wiki in the description of this video. If I can recall off the top of my head, 1 is failed, 2 is success, and 3 is null. and 0 is also null, I think. But 2, it defaults to 2, which is succeed. I believe 1 is actually fail. So I don't remember what 3 and 0 do. 3 might be for like free-for-all, maybe. That might be something that no one knows about, and it's actually something only Gaijin knows. I don't know. The team is set to A, so basically this updates the objective status of Team A, which this objective is set to. So, I made it that, I think that's it, yes. Go to the mission objective. Basically, you can type that it's a primary objective. If you uncheck this, it becomes a secondary, which you might know this from if you play Dynamic Campaign and such. It'll say return to airfield if you say like continue the mission. Basically that would be a secondary objective, but just leave it as primary for now, which is, you know, very basic obviously because we're not getting too complex here with mission making. Time limit is set to 10,000 seconds. You can just do the math, the time conversion if you will, if you want it to be specific, but I just put 10,000 in. That's plenty of time. Team A, so this is an objective for Team A. Now, on success, I have not put anything on fail. On success, you put game MP change score, which then brings you down here. You want to set the value to negative 5,000, so say delete 5,000 points. You also have to hit the value system, which is either by amount or percentage. So basically percentage would be percentage of total tickets that are left, and amount is just generally just what I put in, 5,000. So if I put it to percent, it would be negative whatever percent. If I didn't put a negative in front of this 5,000, it would actually give Team B 5,000 more tickets. So you can also do it like if on fail, the other team gets tickets, stuff like that. The team down here has to be set to B because basically the team that is going to lose tickets is B. So that's how it works. It's very simple. Not really. It's simple for me, but kind of complex to understand. I put some Tunguskas down to defend the bombing point, which is just a military base asset. That's all it is. So now I'm going to load up War Thunder, going to load up the mission and make sure that everything works properly. So wish me luck. Alright, so here we are in our mission, and everything looks good. The helipad is there, the enemy airbase is there, the spawn points, the cap, and the bombing point. So what we are going to do is going to take the F-104S. We're going to spawn at Bagram. Ooh, that sounds good. Basically, if you want to know that your heli spawn works, the fact that this is not grayed out and this is actually like selectable basically means that the spawn does indeed work. If it wasn't working, that would mean that it's broke. So we know that the helipad spawn works. We know by the AI spawning that the ground spawn works. Now we just got to test that the bombing point does actually bleed tickets, which would actually end the game. The enemy airfield actually should have the modular things, unless I forgot to actually check it. Maybe I unchecked it. Basically, it would show 4 icons around that circle. Let's try not to get shot down. Ooh. Hey-yo. And I missed one bomb. Ooh. The tickets are going to bleed very quickly, so I probably should have increased it. Now that I think about it. Well, at least we know that the spawn works. Although, I would have to get into it myself and see that you can recapture it, because I'm pretty certain that it is behaving like a conquest spawn point. Let's see. Come on. Destroy it. Yes. Okay. Alright, so it did work. Excellent. Okay. I'm very happy now. I got that all to work properly. I did it all completely wrong last night. I forgot some things, so... Hooray! Thank God that works. I'm going to test the tank spawn now, and I'm going to do it in the most badass of tanks, which will be the Ariete. So we're going to load bank in here, and we're going to make sure that the tank cap can actually be recaptured, which means it does behave like a conquest point. It's also going to take a while to load because for some weird reason Afghanistan is taking forever to load, and it's just this mission. I don't know why, but my custom mission on Afghanistan just takes a while to load in. It's kind of weird. None of my other missions do this. Actually, maybe Rising Dawn does. One of them, yeah, so one of them does kind of do this, but wow, that was actually quicker to load in. We're going to spawn here, and we're going to drive, and we're going to slap people with our round. Also, funny enough, being on a map like this in a ground unit, you can see there in the back the LOD of the terrain is, yeah. So, while we drive, I'm going to, this is probably going to make this video pretty long, but I'm going to talk about this. So, a user on War Thunder Live named Rydar2 was, last I checked, working on a tank enduring confrontation mission. And he was going to make it take place like the Battle of El Alamein, and he was going to actually do it on an air map. Which I believe he was going to use Tunisia as a base, but I think El Alamein actually does have its own level file that actually does not have the El Alamein tank map boundaries, which I don't remember if I said this in the last episode, but basically if it's a tank level, whatever you see on the minimap when you play on that level in War Thunder in a normal game is what the boundary is restricted to. And you can't go outside of it. There's just nothing you can do. It's literally restricted into the level's coding, if that's layman term word. Not really in the coding, but you get the idea. Basically, it's just in the file bin itself. It's something you cannot change unless you play in single player, which means it would not be a multiplayer mission. So I capped. I'm now going to J out. And yeah, they can capture it again. So yes, it does function as a conquest point. Oh, well, our T-64 got back on it. It must have killed the AI. But yeah, it does decap, so yeah, it's a conquest point. And I totally destroyed the accuracy of those Tungushkas, by the way. Their value is 0.01, which means that they basically won't hit anything. If it was 0.1, they would actually still hit me pretty easily. If it was 1, they would basically no-scope me. So if you want to know what AI coding is like in War Thunder right now, that's kind of the move. So yeah. Anyways, guys, that's pretty much it for this episode. I can't really think of anything else to make this in a reasonable amount of time. So I think next episode I can go into scripting AI to do some things. In terms of functioning. I might actually use one of my missions that I've already made as a base for this and not use the Afghanistan level. Or I might just use it as a reference, I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Steel Wolf, and I'll see you guys next time.